At my mother-in-law's anniversary celebration, my husband suddenly shouted from the other side of the ballroom that my presence was an embarrassment to his family. In front of everyone, he told me to leave and wait outside. Moments later, his security staff escorted me firmly to the waiting car and shut the doors behind me. I sat there helplessly, tapping on the dark window as tears rolled down my face, feeling completely alone and humiliated. Then something unexpected happened. The elderly driver slowly turned around and spoke in a steady, gentle voice. He told me not to cry and explained that my father had completed all the legal documents. The car, the security team, and even the entire company were now under my name. He looked at me respectfully and asked what my instructions were and how I wished to handle the situation with my husband. Before the story continues, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share it in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss future stories. Now, to truly understand how a simple music teacher ended up facing such a powerful moment, we need to rewind the clock by 1 hour. The grand ballroom of one of Atlanta's most elite venues, the St. Regis Grand, was overflowing with luxury. Crystal decorations sparkled under bright lights, and long tables were filled with carefully prepared dishes. The room carried a heavy blend of costly perfumes and fresh flowers, creating an atmosphere meant to impress. This was the 65th birthday celebration of Patricia Thorne, Marcus's mother, a woman widely known for her social influence and public charity work. Guests from the city's upper circle had gathered to honor her, treating the event as if it were a royal affair. Near one of the columns stood Serena Hawthorne, trying to remain unnoticed. She gently adjusted her simple beige dress, one she had made herself after spending several late nights sewing to save money. Marcus had often reminded her that finances were tight and discouraged spending on new clothes. As Serena glanced around the room, she noticed the other women dressed in expensive gowns and shining jewelry. The contrast made her feel small and uncomfortable. She scanned the crowd for her husband. Marcus Thorne, confident and well-dressed in a perfectly fitted tuxedo, moved smoothly from group to group, smiling and chatting as though everything in the world was exactly as it should be. He laughed easily, shook hands with influential guests, and smiled as if the room belonged to him. For Marcus, this night was more than his mother's celebration. It was a public display of his status and success. When his eyes landed on Serena, his smile tightened. He walked over fast and grabbed her elbow, squeezing hard enough to make her flinch. "Why are you standing here like you don't belong?" he whispered sharply, keeping a polite smile for anyone watching. "Go to the main table. My mother is about to speak. And stand straight. You're supposed to look confident." Serena nodded quietly, pushing down her hurt feelings. After 10 years of marriage, she had learned that image mattered more to Marcus than kindness or respect. She made her way to the main table, where Patricia Thorne was already surrounded by guests. Patricia was clearly enjoying the attention. Dressed in a deep burgundy velvet gown, she looked powerful and self-assured, accepting praise as if it were her natural right. Serena picked up a glass of champagne from a server, mainly to steady her shaking hands and give herself a moment to breathe. Trying to do the proper thing, Serena stepped forward gently. "Happy birthday," she said softly. Before she could finish, Patricia suddenly turned around with force, swinging her arm as though Serena weren't there at all. Her elbow struck Serena's arm, and the glass slipped from Serena's fingers. The sound of shattering glass echoed across the floor. Conversation stopped. The music cut off. Champagne spilled over the shiny wooden surface, with a few drops touching the edge of Patricia's dress. The room fell into complete silence and every pair of eyes turned towards Serena. She stood frozen, her face burning with embarrassment. Patricia let out an exaggerated sigh, loud enough for everyone to hear, and brushed at her dress even though the mark was barely visible. "Honestly," she said coldly, "this is exactly what I expected." Her tone carried judgment, not concern. Marcus rushed over immediately, his face flushed with anger. He noticed the looks from his business partners and the quiet reactions around the room. His carefully built image felt threatened. Without asking what had happened or checking on Serena, he raised his voice. "What are you doing?" he snapped harshly. "Do you have no control at all? Were you trying to cause trouble?" "She turned into me," Serena said softly, trying to explain, her voice shaking. Marcus cut her off instantly. "Enough," he said. "Stop making excuses. You always manage to put me in a bad position." His words were sharp and public, and Serena felt smaller than ever as the room listened in silence. Marcus snapped that he had lifted her out of a difficult background, and now she couldn't even manage something as simple as holding a glass. Without hesitation, he seized her arm with painful force. Serena gasped, startled by the sudden grip as he pulled her away from the table and straight through the middle of the ballroom. "Marcus, you're hurting me," she whispered, struggling to keep up. "Everyone is staring." "Let them stare," he shouted back, clearly enjoying the control. "They should see what I deal with." His voice echoed as he accused her of shaming his family and dragged her toward the large exit doors without slowing down. Two security guards in dark suits rushed over immediately. Marcus pointed toward Serena and ordered them to take her outside and put her in the car. He told them to make sure the doors stayed locked. The guards, trained to follow instructions without hesitation, took Serena by the arms. She didn't fight back. The shock left her numb and unable to react. Marcus turned away as if nothing had happened and walked back into the ballroom, adjusting his jacket as he went. A few guests clapped softly, approving of what they believed was him handling the situation. Serena was led outside and the cool night air hit her face, making her shiver. One guard opened the back door of a sleek black sedan and pushed her inside. The door slammed shut and the locks clicked firmly. She sat alone in the dim interior, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt cold and empty. Serena leaned against the tinted window, tears blurring her vision. Through the glass, she could still see the bright lights of the ballroom where the celebration continued. The man she had loved for 10 years was likely laughing again, acting as though she had never existed. The weight of humiliation overwhelmed her. She struck the door with her fists, then the window, desperate and panicked. "Please let me out," she cried, knowing her voice couldn't escape the soundproof car. All she wanted was to go home, anywhere away from this moment. Her face was streaked with tears, and her thoughts spiraled as she wondered how she could face anyone again. Then she realized she wasn't alone. In the driver's seat was Mr. James, the elderly driver who had served the Thorne family long before Marcus rose to power. He was usually quiet, almost invisible, and often dismissed by Marcus despite his deep knowledge of the city. Slowly, Mr. James turned off the engine and silence filled the car. He looked at Serena through the rearview mirror, his expression calm and steady, with none of the usual distance she expected to see. There was something different in Mr. James's eyes now, steady, firm, and unshaken. When he spoke, his voice carried quiet authority. "Serena," he said clearly, "stop crying. Tears won't protect you, and right now they only work against you." Serena paused, startled by his tone. Slowly, she wiped her cheek with her sleeve and tried to steady her breathing. "Please," she said softly, "just open the door. I'll take public transport and go home." "No," Mr. James replied without hesitation. "We are not leaving until you hear the full truth." He turned slightly in his seat and held up a tablet. "Marcus believes your father is a failure who chose to disappear from society," he said calmly. "That belief was intentional." Mr. James explained that Serena's father, Fletcher Bloit, had created this image on purpose. He wanted to see who Marcus truly was when power went unchecked. That test lasted 10 years, and it ended today. Serena stared at him, confused and overwhelmed. None of this made sense to her. Her father had lived simply, yes. She had quietly sent him money whenever she could, careful to hide it from Marcus. "This morning," Mr. James continued, "your father activated a transfer that was prepared long ago." He handed her the tablet. "Please look closely." With shaking hands, Serena took the device. On the screen was an official document from the corporate registry. The words blurred at first, but Mr. James gently pointed to one line. She read it slowly. "Owner, Serena B. Hawthorne." Her breath caught. Marcus's name was nowhere on the page. "That can't be right," she whispered. "Marcus runs the company. He told everyone he owned it." "He never did," Mr. James replied evenly. "He was hired to manage it. His contract was for 10 years only. That contract ended last night." For the first time, Serena truly saw the man in front of her. Mr. James wasn't just a driver. He was confident, informed, and fully in control of the situation. "As of this moment," he said, "Marcus Thorne holds no position. You are the legal owner of the business, this vehicle, and the entire security team outside." Serena looked back toward the glowing windows of the ballroom, where Marcus was still celebrating. Mr. James spoke again, his voice firm but respectful. Your father waited until Marcus revealed his real character. He has done that clearly. What happens next is your decision. Serena clutched the tablet tightly, as if it were the only solid thing keeping her grounded. The words on the screen didn't change, but their meaning slowly sank in. She looked up at Mr. James, who met her gaze without hesitation, waiting. I don't understand, she said, her voice cracking. Why didn't my father stop this sooner? Why let me go through all of this? So you would know the truth, Mr. James answered simply. And so Marcus would never suspect a thing. He paused, then added, but there's no time to reflect right now. Reaching into his jacket, he pulled out a folded document and handed it to her. Marcus didn't just humiliate you tonight, he said. He planned to ruin you tomorrow. Serena unfolded the paper. It was a divorce filing, dated for the next morning. The document claimed she had no income and no right to any shared assets. He intended to serve you this at breakfast, Mr. James continued. Once his contract ended, he planned to remove you completely. The security was already instructed to block your access to the apartment. Serena stared at the page, her hands trembling, not from fear anymore but from the sudden clarity of everything she had almost lost. When Mr. James said she had only been useful to Marcus until his time was up, something inside Serena broke free. The sadness that had crushed her moments earlier disappeared, replaced by a sharp, steady calm. For 10 long years she had supported him quietly, fixing his clothes, cooking carefully planned meals, tolerating his mother's cold remarks, and denying herself comfort so he could appear successful. She had loved him sincerely while he had only been counting down the days. Serena straightened her back, her tears drying without effort, and when she spoke again, her voice was firm and controlled as she asked Mr. James to open the car. He did so with approval and handed her a thick envelope of emergency cash her father had prepared, knowing she would need it. Stepping out into the night, Serena felt no chill at all. She adjusted her simple dress, which now felt dignified rather than modest, because she finally understood her own value. When the same guards who had removed her moments earlier tried to stop her, a quiet signal from Mr. James made them step aside at once. Serena walked back into the ballroom as music played and laughter filled the air. Marcus was entertaining guests and Patricia sat proudly nearby, but as Serena moved forward with calm confidence, conversations slowly stopped. One by one, heads turned and a deep silence spread across the room as everyone realized she had returned, no longer dismissed, no longer invisible, and no longer powerless. The musicians sensed the tension and slowly stopped playing as Marcus turned around and saw Serena standing there. His face darkened with anger and he pushed through the guests toward her, demanding to know if she had lost her senses and accusing her of trying to create drama in front of everyone. He called out for security, but when 2 guards appeared they didn't move toward Serena. Instead they stood quietly against the wall watching him without expression. Serena didn't hesitate or respond to his shouting. She walked past Marcus as if he didn't exist and calmly stepped onto the small stage where the microphones stood. Marcus completely lost control, yelling for someone to remove her and calling on his mother to intervene, but before Patricia could speak, Serena picked up the microphone. Her clear, steady voice echoed through the ballroom as she politely apologized for the interruption and said she needed to make an important announcement. The room went silent as guests leaned in, expecting scandal. Serena introduced herself by full name and stated plainly that she was the sole owner of the Thorn Group of companies. A wave of whispers spread and a few people laughed, assuming it was a joke. Marcus tried to recover by mocking her and claiming she was unwell, telling her to step down before embarrassing herself further. Serena ignored him and continued, explaining that company funds had been improperly used and that she was immediately ending the event, adding that payment for the banquet had been stopped and asking guests to leave. Marcus turned pale and rushed toward the stage, shouting that she was lying and ordering security to remove her, threatening their jobs. At that exact moment, Mr. James, standing near the entrance, gave a quiet signal to the head of security, shifting the balance of power in the room without a single word. Instead of moving towards Serena, the 2 large guards stepped in front of Marcus, blocking his way to the stage and calmly asking him to step back, explaining that they were following the owner's instructions. Marcus froze, his eyes darting between the guards and Serena as shocked whispers spread through the room. Patricia shouted that it had to be a joke and demanded Marcus take control, but his authority was slipping fast. He tried to smile at the guests and brushed it off as a family disagreement, calling for drinks and music to continue, yet nothing happened. The orchestra stayed silent and the servers didn't move. Serena lifted the microphone again and firmly announced there would be no music and no drinks, revealing that Marcus had failed to mention one critical fact: he had run out of money. She explained that the staff had not been paid for months and that the party itself was funded with the company's last remaining resources. Marcus visibly crumbled as she walked to the head waiter and openly paid the full amount owed, plus extra for the night, instructing him to distribute it immediately. As the staff quietly divided the money in front of everyone, the guests began stepping away from Marcus, their expressions filled with discomfort and judgment. Serena ended the event with a single sentence, and the room emptied in silence, leaving Marcus alone and exposed. By the next morning, shaken and angry, he went to the company office believing he could fix everything, only to be stopped at the entrance when his access card failed, marking the true beginning of his fall. Today, Lena wasn't blushing. She was pale and shrinking in her chair as Marcus glared at her. "Mr. Thornham. I'm sorry," she stammered, avoiding his eyes. "Your pass has been deactivated." "Deactivated? By whom?" "I'm the suit." "Open it now," he demanded. Lena's hand trembled as she pointed to a display board in the lobby. There a fresh official notice hung. Directive Number 1, declaring Marcus Thorne removed from office due to loss of trust and expiration of his contract, with a sweeping signature at the bottom, S.B. Hawthorne. Marcus ripped the sheet from the wall, crumpled it and threw it on the floor, shouting that it was a forgery and threatening to call the police. He stormed out of the building, already plotting to go home, seized the original corporate documents from the safe, and forced Serena to reverse everything. 20 minutes later, his car screeched to a halt at their suburban estate. Marcus jumped out and ran to the pedestrian gate, punching in the code. It didn't work. He rang the buzzer. Silence. "Serena, open up," he yelled, yanking and kicking at the gate. A retired neighbor watering his lawn stepped over. "Marcus, what's all this noise?" he asked firmly. "Serena is home but asked not to be disturbed." Marcus shrieked that it was his house but the locks had been changed. In frustration he tried to climb the fence, slipped and even threw a stone at a first-floor window, cracking the double-pane glass. "I'm calling the police for vandalism, you hooligan," the neighbor warned. "Go ahead, call them," Marcus screamed, pounding the gate. Inside, Serena stood at a second-floor window watching. Her heart raced but she didn't move to intervene. Yesterday she would have rushed down, apologized and calmed him. Now, seeing him desperate, frantic and powerless, she felt a strange mix of fear and clarity. "Maybe I should talk to him, he's still my husband," she whispered. Mr. James, sitting calmly at the kitchen table with his tea, shook his head. "No, Serena. Pity is a poor advisor, especially now." He stood and walked over, placing a small cardboard box on the windowsill, signaling that it was time to act, and that she no longer needed to be constrained by old habits. Mr. James explained that he had taken the box from Marcus's office safe early that morning while Marcus was still asleep at the motel, adding calmly that the guards had allowed him in because they now answered to Serena. When Serena looked inside, she saw neatly organized folders and asked what they meant. Mr. James told her it was the truth she had been missing and gently pointed out that she still hoped her marriage had begun with real love. Serena didn't answer, but deep inside she had always believed their meeting years ago was fate. She opened the first folder and felt the air leave her chest. Inside were dated photographs of her childhood home, her father working outside, and even Serena herself returning from music lessons, all taken months before she ever met Marcus. Realizing she and her family had been observed long before, she felt a deep chill. Beneath the photos was a formal investment agreement stating that her father had provided the initial capital and control of the company to Marcus only on the condition that he marry Serena. One section made everything painfully clear. Full ownership would transfer only after 10 uninterrupted years of marriage, and if Marcus initiated a divorce before that time, he would lose everything. Serena realized that the anniversary party marked exactly 10 years since their wedding. Mr. James confirmed that Marcus had treated their marriage like a long assignment, not a partnership, and that once the time period ended, he believed Serena was no longer needed. The final pages showed messages between Marcus and his lawyer, written days earlier, outlining plans to remove Serena from his life immediately after the deadline passed. As a police siren sounded faintly outside and Marcus fell silent at the gate, Serena closed the folder. Her hands were steady now, her mind clear, and whatever sadness remained had hardened into quiet resolve. Any trace of sympathy Serena had felt moments earlier was completely gone, erased by the cold language of the contract that proved her life had been treated like a calculated deal rather than a marriage. 10 years had passed not as a partnership, but as a long transaction where she was seen as an inconvenience tied to assets. She looked out the window and watched police officers restrain Marcus beside a patrol car as he shouted about his lost control. Without emotion, Serena told Mr. James to inform the officers that she would not pursue charges for the damage outside, not out of mercy but because a brief punishment would be too small. She wanted Marcus free to witness everything he believed was his slowly fall apart. Calmly, she reached for the next folder labeled with her mother-in-law's property, ready to move forward, when the front door suddenly rattled and Patricia's sharp voice echoed through the house, announcing her arrival with a spare key. Heavy footsteps followed, and Patricia stormed into the room, disheveled and furious, accusing Serena of ruining her son and their family name. She raised her hand in anger, expecting Serena to react as she always had before, but this time Serena caught her wrist firmly and stopped her cold. In a quiet, steady voice, she warned her never to try that again and pushed her hand away, leaving Patricia stunned and unsteady. As her mother-in-law protested and boasted about her status and property, Serena calmly corrected her, explaining that those claims were no longer true. She placed an official mortgage document on the table and told her to read it carefully, making it clear that the balance of power had shifted completely and that the reckoning she feared had already begun. Patricia stared at the papers in disbelief and claimed Marcus had told her they were just routine documents for business growth, but Serena calmly explained that it was actually a loan Marcus had taken out using the apartment as collateral to cover serious financial mistakes before an audit. He believed he would gain full control of the company within days and repay everything with Serena's assets, but he was wrong. Serena gave her a moment to absorb the truth, then added that the repayment deadline had already passed, meaning the bank now had the legal right to take the property. When Patricia weakly denied it, Serena made it clear that the decision now rested with her, since her father's company controlled the bank involved. She placed an official eviction notice on the table and stated plainly that the apartment had been reassigned as company property and that Patricia had one day to leave. Patricia reacted with shock and desperation, insisting Serena wouldn't dare do such a thing, but Serena reminded her that for years she had been treated as worthless and was simply returning the lesson. As Patricia's confidence collapsed into fear and bitterness, she suddenly lashed out, blaming Serena for everything and admitting she had known about the contract all along, even encouraging Marcus to take the loan. She boasted that they believed Serena would never fight back and that they had planned to reclaim everything once the inheritance transferred. When Patricia mocked Serena's father, claiming he had abandoned her, Serena demanded an explanation, only to hear the final truth, that her father had written letters regularly, which Patricia had deliberately hidden. The revelation landed heavily, confirming that the betrayal ran far deeper than Serena had ever imagined. Serena felt as if the ground had shifted beneath her as she realized her father had been writing to her all those years, while she had believed he was disappointed or had forgotten her after she moved to the city. Patricia, almost proud of her cruelty, confessed that she had answered those letters herself, copying Serena's handwriting and sending messages meant to cut her father off completely. The truth left the room in stunned silence, and Serena struggled to accept that for 10 years she had felt abandoned while her father's love had been deliberately hidden from her. She finally understood that her pain had been manufactured for money and control, and the realization cut deeper than any insult. When Mr. James stepped forward, clearly ready to remove Patricia immediately, Serena stopped him, choosing instead to let her mother-in-law pack her belongings and face the full weight of her actions. Calmly but firmly, Serena demanded the box of letters and warned that if it was not returned, there would be serious legal consequences. Patricia, shaken and exposed, fled without another word. Serena collapsed onto the sofa, repeating in disbelief that her father had never stopped loving her, and when Mr. James reassured her that her father had kept writing out of faith and patience, she finally allowed herself to cry, not from anger but from relief. Wiping her eyes and standing up with new resolve, Serena made it clear that this chapter was ending and a new one was about to begin. "Let's go to the office," Serena said, gripping the steering wheel with determination. "I need to check the accounting records. I want to see what that family man spent my money on while his mother was stealing my letters." Meanwhile, Marcus was already at an apartment in a newly built complex on the city outskirts. Chloe, his former secretary, a tall blonde clearly showing her pregnancy, opened the door. "Marcus? Why are you here so early? I thought you were kicking that gray mouse out today," she asked. Marcus squeezed inside without even taking off his shoes. "Plans changed, kitten," he lied, tossing his travel bag into the hallway. "Some legal complications. That crazy woman forged the documents. I'll crash here a couple of days while my lawyers fix it." Chloe frowned, knowing what had been planned and eagerly anticipating the day. "Complications? You promised we'd move into the mansion." Marcus barked. "We will move," then softened his tone. "Of course we will. It just takes time. I'll declare her legally incompetent. The judge will side with me. The money isn't going anywhere, it's mine." Chloe pursed her lips but nodded. After all, she was carrying his child, the heir to the empire, as Marcus liked to call it. "Fine," she said, "but I need money tomorrow for the ultrasound and vitamins." Marcus waved her off, collapsing onto the sofa. Everything tomorrow. But for Chloe, tomorrow came sooner than expected. She had seen the news and the rumors from the anniversary party were already spreading. Panic and greed took over. If Marcus couldn't control his wife, she would. Within an hour, Chloe burst into the community center where Serena, despite everything, was rehearsing the children's choir. Parents and children filled the hall as Serena focused on the sheet music at the piano. The doors slammed open and Chloe's voice rang out, loud and frantic. "There she is," she shouted, pointing directly at the stage. "The thief." Chloe screamed and the music stopped instantly. The children froze, eyes wide with fright, and parents leapt to their feet. Heavily pregnant, Chloe stormed down the aisle, pointing at Serena. "Look at this saint," she yelled. "She acts like teacher of the year, but she stole from her husband. Kicked him out and took everything." Serena slowly lowered her hands, recognizing the young woman from a photo on Marcus' phone, once dismissed as just a colleague. "Ma'am, please leave. There are children here," Serena said calmly, though her heart pounded. "I won't leave." Chloe screamed. "You stole my baby's future. You barren nothing. You're jealous because I can give Marcus what you couldn't in 10 years. The words hit hard. Everyone knew Serena's struggles with fertility, her repeated treatments, and the heartbreak she endured after each failed attempt. "You're a thief." Chloe continued, stepping closer to the stage. "Give Marcus his money back. It's his company." Serena's voice cut through firmly. Security. 2 community center guards, normally lounging at the front desk, quickly moved to escort Chloe out. "Get your hands off me. I'm carrying the owner of the Thorn Group's baby," she screamed as they guided her to the exit. Once the doors closed, silence fell. Parents exchanged looks, some sympathetic, others judging. "Rehearsal is over," Serena said quietly. "I apologize. You are all free to go." She gathered her sheet music and slipped out through the staff exit where Mr. James waited. In the car, she gave instructions to drive straight to the office. Once in the CEO's chair, Marcus' chair just yesterday, Serena powered up the computer, needing focus to make sense of the chaos. Chloe's words, "barren nothing," echoed in her mind. She opened the accounting database and said to Mr. James, "Show me his personal expenses charged to the company." Scrolling through the transactions, she found the usual indulgences, restaurants, hotels, jewelry stores, but then one entry made her pause, standing out sharply among the rest. A monthly payment of $8,500. Recipient: the Beaumont Center for Reproductive Health. Purpose: consulting services. Serena's eyes widened. "Beaumont? That's where I went for treatment." She frowned. Marcus had always claimed the procedures were too expensive, insisting they couldn't afford extra tests or treatments. Yet the statement clearly showed he had been paying the clinic every month quietly for 5 years. "Mr. James, let's go to Beaumont," she said, printing the statement. The clinic was quiet and sterile when they arrived. Serena stormed into the office of Dr. Morova, the chief physician who had managed her care all these years. Dr. Morova, a man with neat hair and glasses, flinched at her sudden appearance. "Serena, you don't have an appointment." She slammed the bank statement on his desk. "Explain this. Marcus Thorne has been paying you personally every month for 5 years. For what?" Dr. Morova went pale, fumbling with his glasses. That is confidential," he stammered. Serena's voice was sharp. "I am the owner of the company from which these funds came. And I am your patient. Tell me the truth or the district attorney will be here within the hour." He sighed, realizing denial was pointless now that Marcus' control was gone. "Marcus Thorne was paying me to adjust your therapy," he admitted quietly. Serena felt her hands grow cold. "Adjust my therapy?" she asked. Dr. Morova looked down. "You are healthy, Serena. Absolutely healthy. You never had any problems conceiving." Serena froze, disbelief twisting inside her. "But, the tests, the pills," he nodded. "The tests were normal. Marcus demanded I give you false diagnoses. The pills you took for 5 years, supposedly to stimulate ovulation, were actually strong hormonal contraceptives." Serena gripped the desk to steady herself. "Contraceptives? I was taking birth control thinking it was treatment." "Yes," Dr. Morova whispered. "Marcus decided a child was not part of his business plan. A divorce would be harder to finalize if there were an heir. He paid me to make sure you wouldn't get pregnant, but so you would continue believing you were trying." A chilling silence filled the office. Serena remembered every tear, every painful procedure, every hopeful prayer, and how Marcus had comforted her with empty words. He hadn't just withheld love, he had stolen her right to be a mother. Slowly she lifted her gaze to Dr. Morova. No tears remained, only a cold, empty void. "You are a monster too, doctor," she said, her voice cutting through him like ice. "You took the Hippocratic Oath and sold it for $50,000 a month." Without another word she turned and walked out. Mr. James waited quietly in the hallway, a steady presence as she exited, her world forever changed. Mr. James had heard everything through the slightly open door, his fists clenched so tightly his knuckles turned pale, but Serena stopped him before he could speak. "No explanations," she said firmly. "We're leaving." When he asked where, she paused in the corridor, her expression hard and resolved. "Not home. We're ending this properly." She pulled out her phone and calmly called the bank, ordering all corporate cards issued to Marcus to be blocked and the lease on his SUV cancelled immediately, each word feeling final and deliberate. The pain of betrayal burned inside her, but instead of breaking her, it sharpened her focus. At the same moment, Marcus stood at a gas station, confident and careless, trying to pay for fuel with his premium card, only to see it declined. One card after another failed, panic rising as the cashier demanded payment and he realized he barely had any cash. Suddenly, his car shut down on its own, a message flashing that the engine had been remotely locked, followed by a cold call from the leasing company informing him the vehicle was being repossessed on Serena's orders. As a tow truck pulled in and impatient drivers honked behind him, Marcus stood frozen, understanding that with a single phone call his world had collapsed. Furious and humiliated, he grabbed his briefcase and walked away along the dusty road, one desperate thought pounding in his head. He needed money fast, and his eyes drifted to the expensive watch on his wrist, the last symbol of the life he was losing. Marcus had always flaunted his expensive watch, bragging that it was worth the price of a small house. Now, desperate for cash, he muttered, "A pawn shop. That's it," and stormed into a high-end shop downtown, tossing the watch onto the velvet cushion. "I need $1 million urgently. We'll settle the rest later," he barked. The appraiser, an older man with a jeweler's loupe, scrutinized the piece and then shook his head. "Young man, I don't accept replicas, even good ones." "Are you blind?" Marcus flared. "It's genuine. Serious people gave it to me." The appraiser smirked. "Chinese mechanism. Gold-plated case, not gold. Worth maybe $50 at a flea market." Shaking, Marcus snatched the watch back, realizing the friends and partners he had tried to impress for years had fooled him. Panic clawed at him as he called one contact after another. Boris Peterson, Arcadius, anyone, but all refused, hanging up or denying him. He was left utterly alone. No car, no money, no allies, even his prized watch a fake. Desperate, he remembered the old Thorne family cabin he had neglected to sell. Rushing there, he planned to pawn the antique icons his grandmother had treasured. Kicking open the porch door, the damp smell of decay hit him. In the corner gleamed 3 icons: Saint Nicholas, the Mother of God, and the Savior. With trembling hands he lifted the first and froze. The back read, "Reproduction 2018 Safino Art Workshop." The second, the third, "Reproductions." He yelled in disbelief as cheap paper lithographs fell out of their cracked frames. The silver, the value he had counted on, was gone. Marcus stood alone, stripped of all illusions, realizing that even his last hope had been a lie. Marcus was desperately searching the cabin for the original icons when a calm voice stopped him at the doorway. Mr. James, no longer a servant but a judge, revealed that 5 years earlier he had replaced the real icons with copies, saving the originals in a safe deposit box under Serena's name, knowing Marcus would eventually try to sell even his own heritage. Blinded by rage, Marcus accused him of betrayal, only for Mr. James to play a damning recording in which Marcus had coldly planned to frame and destroy him, proving his own cruelty. Trapped by his words and the evidence around him, the broken door, the smashed icon, Marcus tried to bargain, but Mr. James refused, explaining that money no longer ruled here and that the police were already on the way. As sirens approached, Marcus was physically stopped from fleeing, arrested for breaking and entering and attempted theft, and dragged away in handcuffs, utterly humiliated. Though he later secured a temporary release by calling in an old corrupt favor, he stepped back into the city knowing that his power was gone, his schemes exposed, and his downfall inevitable. Burning with anger, Marcus convinced himself that Serena hadn't truly won yet. She may have taken the company, the money, and the car, but he believed his public image was still intact, and he planned to use it to crush her until she begged him to stop. He rushed to his mother's condo, where Patricia sat surrounded by packed boxes, shaken and exhausted, and when she embraced him in relief, he quickly cut her off and laid out his plan. There was no time for emotions, he said. They were going to the bank and then straight into a public spectacle designed to ruin Serena's name. Marcus explained that reporters were already waiting and that Patricia would have to accuse Serena of cruelty, instability, and manipulation, claiming the company was taken through pressure and deceit. Though Patricia hesitated, knowing it wasn't true, Marcus dismissed her concerns, insisting that public opinion mattered more than facts and warning her that refusal would leave her with nowhere to go. Overcome by fear, she agreed. Soon after, journalists packed a conference room, eager for drama, as cameras focused on Marcus and his mother, both carefully styled to look defeated. Speaking softly and playing the role of a long-suffering husband, Marcus claimed he had stayed silent for years and accused Serena of destroying his family, then invited his mother to speak. Across the city, Serena watched the live broadcast from her office, realizing that Marcus was making one last desperate attempt to turn the world against her. Mr. James quietly asked if he should mute the broadcast when he noticed Serena's hands clenched white with tension, but she refused, saying she wanted to witness just how far they would go. On screen, Patricia Thorne looked fragile and shaken as she pulled the microphone closer, while Marcus held her hand in a way that seemed supportive to the audience but was clearly meant to control her. As Patricia began to speak, memories rushed through her. How her son had shouted at her, pushed her into risky decisions and used her whenever it suited him, and in that moment something inside her broke. Realizing that lying would only destroy her completely while saving a son who would never protect her, she suddenly pulled her hand away and announced to the cameras that Marcus was lying. The room fell silent as Marcus panicked and tried to stop her, but Patricia, overwhelmed and finally honest, confessed that he had forced her to come, written her script and pressured her to blame Serena. Reporters erupted as she went on, admitting that Marcus had taken money, pushed her to risk her home, and even tricked her into signing papers she later realized were not truly signed by her at all. As the truth spilled out live on air, Marcus stood frozen, watching his carefully planned attack collapse, while Serena, from her office, saw his last weapon turn against him in front of the entire city. Marcus leaned close to his mother and whispered in disbelief, asking what she thought she was doing and warning that she was ruining him. But Patricia looked at him with a cold mix of anger and relief and quietly told him that it was better he face consequences than she end up homeless. She made it clear that Serena was now the stronger one, and helping her was the only way to survive, before turning back to the microphone and loudly offering to cooperate, promising to explain everything he had hidden if it meant she could keep a roof over her head. Watching from her office, Serena slowly released a breath she didn't realize she was holding, understanding that Marcus had finally lost control and his own family had chosen a new side. She calmly muted the broadcast, instructed Mr. James to alert the lawyers, and decided that Patricia would stay in the condo only as a temporary occupant, living each day knowing it could be taken back at any moment. Moments later, news arrived that Marcus had fled the press through a back exit, leaving Serena certain he would try one last desperate move at the community center, where the evening concert was about to begin. Meanwhile, Marcus ran through side streets, ignored non-stop calls and rushed to his last refuge, only to find the apartment empty, his savings gone, and a short note making it painfully clear that even the person he trusted most had walked away, leaving him alone with the truth that every bridge he had built was now burned. With only one obsession left, Marcus convinced himself that Serena was the mastermind behind his downfall and that facing her would somehow restore his power. So he rushed to the community center where the children's concert was underway, bursting into the auditorium in a filthy, unhinged state and shouting accusations as the choir fell silent. Staggering down the aisle, he demanded his company and money back, sneering that Serena was nothing more than a music teacher. But when she calmly asked him to leave so as not to frighten the children, his rage drove him toward the stage, until parents began to rise one by one, forming a human barrier between him and her. Voices echoed from every corner of the hall, ordering him out and shaming him, and Marcus suddenly found himself surrounded by the very people he had always looked down on, united in defense of Serena. Faced with their collective strength and contempt, his fury drained into confusion and fear, and for the first time he understood that he was utterly alone, standing against a community that respected Serena not for wealth or power, but for who she truly was. Marcus tried to defend himself, mumbling that he had been deceived, but the worker stepped forward and firmly told him that everyone had seen the news and knew the truth, that he had manipulated his own family and destroyed his marriage, warning him to leave before authorities were called. Desperate and shaking, Marcus turned toward the stage and begged Serena to speak for him, insisting he was still her husband and demanding to see the owner, only for Serena to calmly step down, the crowd silently parting to let her pass. Standing tall just a few steps from him, she confirmed that she was indeed the owner and listened without emotion as he pleaded for a deal, promising to disappear if she returned even half of what he lost. Serena refused, explaining that bargaining was no longer possible and that he now faced only two outcomes, then calmly outlined the serious legal consequences uncovered by her team, including financial crimes and falsified records, with key witnesses already cooperating. As Marcus nearly collapsed under the weight of it, she offered a second option instead of confinement: a strict employment contract for a low-level position in a remote northern branch he himself once used as punishment for others. Outraged and humiliated, Marcus protested, but Serena made it clear this was his only chance to stay free and repay the damage honestly, as officers waited quietly nearby for her signal. Surrounded by the community, stripped of power and pride, Marcus finally understood that the woman he once dismissed now stood unmovable before him, and his shaking hands revealed just how completely his world had fallen apart. Serena let herself smile, a calm, victorious smile this time, not the one forged from endurance but from triumph and justice. The cityscape blurred past, frost glinting on the streets, and for the first time in years she felt the weight of the past lift. Marcus had fallen, powerless and humiliated, while she had reclaimed everything stolen from her: her freedom, her dignity, and now the chance to become a mother on her own terms. She thought of the Bloit Cultural Foundation and the music schools it would support, the children whose lives would be touched, and her own life finally opening to possibilities she had only dreamed of. Mr. James, ever vigilant yet quietly proud, sat beside her, a reassuring presence. "And a kitten for Patricia," Serena mused softly, letting a chuckle escape. Even her former mother-in-law could find a small slice of happiness under her rules. The city passed by, indifferent yet somehow transformed, reflecting the new order Serena had established, not through wealth alone, but through resilience, intelligence and unwavering moral clarity. As the black sedan glided through the streets, Serena allowed herself to imagine spring, a future where her own life, her family and her dreams would finally bloom, honestly, freely and fully. The past, with all its betrayals and deceptions, was behind her. Ahead lay hope, justice and a second chance at life. Patricia now lived in a small studio apartment on the outskirts of the city, one of the old housing units Serena had reassigned from the company. No luxuries, no helpers, Just a modest pension and a small stipend from the foundation, given as long as she stayed out of trouble. Surprisingly, the change seemed to suit her. Stripped of her old power and schemes, Patricia had become quiet, respectful, and cautious, careful not to upset her daughter-in-law unnecessarily. "Let her have it," Serena said softly. "Sometimes taking care of a pet can teach someone compassion. Maybe her heart will genuinely soften now, not out of fear but for real." The car moved onto Central Avenue and the city glittered with Christmas lights. The festive energy made everything feel calmer. Serena glanced out the window and asked, trying to sound casual, "And how is our Arctic coordinator?" She didn't name Marcus, though curiosity made her think of him. "Did he even make it to Alaska?" Mr. James chuckled quietly. "No, Serena. He didn't get past the training phase at the logistics hub here in the city. He couldn't even organize invoices correctly, mixed up shipments, and argued with supervisors constantly, claiming he was the former owner. In short, they let him go just 3 days after he signed the contract." Serena raised her eyebrows. "And where is he now? Jail?" "No," Mr. James replied. "We withdrew the report as we agreed. He's free, but he has to survive on his own now." At a red light, Mr. James spoke again. "Look to your right." Serena turned her head and saw a man bent over the sidewalk, wearing a bright orange municipal vest, chipping ice from the curb with a heavy iron bar. His face was gray and weathered, his beard rough, a knitted cap pulled low over his ears. It was Marcus, the man who had once ruled his world with wealth and power, now reduced to hard labor in the cold. He paused to catch his breath, leaning on the iron bar, and glanced up. His eyes caught the black sedan stopped at the light. He froze, staring at the license plate, then peered into the tinted windows, searching for the woman he had tormented for a decade. But there was no anger in his eyes, only emptiness and a quiet sorrow for the life he had destroyed by his own choices. Serena watched him, expecting to feel satisfaction or revenge, but she felt neither. Marcus had become just another part of the city landscape, like the slushy snow he was clearing, a past that had melted away. "Green light," Mr. James said. Serena turned back from the window. "Let's go, Mr. James. We have a lot to do. Rehearsal tonight." He pressed the gas and the car rolled forward smoothly, leaving Marcus hunched over in the orange vest behind. Marcus spat on the ground, gripped the iron bar tighter, and resumed chipping at the ice. Serena reached for her phone and dialed her father. "Dad." "Hi. Yes, I'm on my way home. No, I'm not alone. I always have someone with me now. Hope and love," Serena whispered to herself. "I'll come visit you at the farm this weekend. Wait for me." She smiled at her reflection in the dark window, feeling a peace she hadn't known in years. The music of her new life was just beginning, and this time, there were no false notes, no lies, no shadows. Only truth and promise. And that, my friends, is the story. Honestly, even I got chills revisiting this ending. What do you think? Did Serena act fairly? Some might say she was too harsh, sending Marcus into exile and forcing Patricia to live in a small apartment with barely enough money to get by. After all, they had shared 10 years of life together. Couldn't she have simply divorced him, given them a fresh start, maybe even a little financial help, and moved on? But then consider what Marcus did. He poisoned his wife with fake treatment so she couldn't have children, all for money. He forged his own mother's signature and was ready to throw her out on the street. In that light, the punishment, manual labor, cold weather, hard work, was gentle compared to the harm he caused. Life itself had corrected the balance. And Patricia? She chose survival, stepping away from schemes and finally finding humility. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Do you think Serena made the right call by giving Marcus a chance to work and reflect on his actions? Or should she have pressed charges to the fullest extent? Would you have shown mercy or taken a harsher route? If Serena's story captivated you, if you felt her struggles as I did, please give this video a like. It really helps our channel grow and allows us to share even more incredible stories. Don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episodes. We have many life dramas coming that will leave you breathless. And if you want to know what happens next, whether Serena finds love, has a child, or builds her dream life, comment below. I want part 2. If enough people request it, I'll make sure to share the continuation. Finally, in the middle of the screen, a window will appear. Click on it to see our other most compelling stories. You won't want to miss them.